Hey everyone, if you like the channel, please consider subscribing. It means a ton. Thanks so much. Enjoy the video.
Smoking. The last step in this process. This is a great place to be. You've done all this work to get here, and this is a pretty relaxed step in the process. So I always smoke my hides. I find that it's an important step. It lends itself to the preservation of the hide and the softness of the hide. Smoke is pretty remarkable and made up a lot of different constituents, and we're going to utilize them to coat the collagen fibers. And in coating the collagen fibers, we're going to inhibit the glues from rehydrating and bonding back together. This is going to keep the hide soft and pliable, and therefore when it gets wet, it won't go back into a stiffer structure that is less ideal and not where you brought it to in that whole stretching process. So it's a really important part, and I also find it the most enjoyable part. It's a time where you get to hang with a fire, sit back and relax, and let a lot of the smoke do the work, not necessarily you. Tools. Very straightforward. You need a mature fire with plenty of coals. You need a shovel. You need a bucket that you can put coals into. You need punky wood, a length of rope, some clothespins, and a piece of fabric that's pretty sturdy. So I often use like a jean canvas material, something that I'm going to use to insulate between the hide and the coals. And that's really about it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move towards a setup where we're going to produce a lot of coals from a fire and place them into a bucket, in which we're going to put punky wood on top. And punky wood is rotten wood. And so that soft, broken down, rotten wood is going to just do an excellent job of smoking. I like to make sure I have plenty of this on hand before it comes time for me to start smoking, because that punky wood is also a sponge and it will just take up any moisture. So I always harvest mine and have some ahead of time that's just dry. I like mine fully dry. We're going to place that punky wood on those coals, and then between the coals and the hide, we're going to have a little bit of fabric just to insulate from the heat so it's not too hot, right? Because proteins are going to denature under high heat. And then we're going to have our hide that's suspended by a string that's over a branch or a beam or whatever it is that you can keep elevated up and above you. We'll use clothespins to attach the hide to the skirt, and we'll be paying attention in a way so that we know that our coals are doing the job of making contact with the punky wood, so that's creating a lot of smoke, nothing's turning over into flame, and that we're making sure our hide is suspended, because worst case scenario in this very relaxed step is that something goes wrong and your hide falls into those coals and gets ruined. So pretty straightforward process, important process, an enjoyable process, something where you can just kind of hang out and watch. And we're going to look for that transformation to occur. Really what we're going to see in it is just a color change on the hide. And the longer you smoke it, the darker those colors are going to be. So we can go for like a nice light buttercream to a dark sort of like orangey brown tones, depending on the length of time that we're using. So we're going to go get this set up and smoke this lovely mink. We're looking at something that could be as short as 20 minutes and as long as an hour. So not that long. There's more time in the setup of the process than the process of it actually smoking. So, 20 minutes is good. I usually just like to go for like up to an hour. Usually it doesn't really require any more of me, and I can just let it hang and let it sit there. Troubleshooting, a couple of things that come up. If I have a bunch of holes in my hide, I need to plug those up. What you're thinking about is that you're creating like a balloon. So a case-skinned hide kind of already has a general balloon shape to it, right? And where there are holes, whether it's limbs or places where there have been holes that have been made, I need to plug those up. And maybe I choose to sew it. Maybe I choose to glue it together, just with some simple Elmer's glue, because that washes out so easily. And something like this, if I had a hole, I would just take a piece of punky wood, because it's soft enough that usually if I can get the right shape of punky wood and the right hole, I can get a nice tight fit. And so in this idea of the balloon, we want smoke to go up and into the hide. And then we want that smoke to push out through the hide. So in this instance, right, if I don't plug up the mouth of the mink, all that smoke is just going to come right out. So I'm going to have to take a piece of punky wood and push that right in there to keep that from happening so that I can really get the smoke to work through the skin of the hide. If I'm working an open skin hide, then I'm going to employ some different techniques. If it's a small hide, I'll just use clothespins, one right next to the other, and I'll clothespin that whole open seam closed so that I'm creating that balloon-like shape. And if I'm working a bigger hide, say I'm working like whitetail hides, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a very thin line of Elmer's glue is my go-to. You could use hide glue, be a little bit more traditional. And I'm going to use a thin layer of hide glue, and I'm going to use clothespins to clothespin that shut. And in about 5 minutes, it dries enough that you can take those clothespins off, maybe frog leap them ahead if you only have so many. It's really important that you just don't get glue everywhere. You know, so that's kind of something that's like a little dab gets here, and then it smears here, and then it gets on your hide. And if it gets on your hide, then that area is not going to smoke, and you'll see a lighter spot or a white spot that's there. So gluing is really nice because it creates a really consistent seam. It's really easy to do, and all you have to do is just tear it open when you're done, and then you can wash it out. Some people will sew the hides together, and some people will staple them together. I don't like having to pull out staples, so glue is my technique. This is kind of a nice convenient advantage to case skinning in this whole process where you don't really have to do much for that. The other thing is that if you're working really wet material, you know, a little dampness can be okay, but if you're working primarily wet material, what looks like a lot of smoke is going to be a lot of steam vapor, and you'll smoke for a long period of time and find that you're not really getting anywhere being that color change, and it might just be because you're just re-steaming that hide, and that's not our goal. It's really the antithesis of our goal. You do want to be concerned about flame up. So if I have punky wood that's not fully rotten, maybe it has like an inner woody core, you see that a lot with branches and knots, then when they're tossed in with the coals, that's something that has structure enough that it can turn into flame. That often happens when you are lifting up the skirt to check on your coals. It gets that flush of oxygen, right? So manageable most of the time. Just something that you want to pay attention to. You don't want to try and deal with like a skirt now, a skirt being that canvas material that's caught on fire, and dealing with that whole thing is a mess. So flame up is real. You want to coax these coals into smoking steadily with contact with the punky wood. So sometimes you need to kind of stir things around. Sometimes you need to give it a little bit of extra air for some oomph. And then you're going to find this sweet saturation point where you're not getting thin, wispy smoke, but all of a sudden you get this like nice, thick, milky smoke. And as soon as you hit that, then you're going to want to get your skirt on with your hide already attached and suspended and just let it do its work. To make a few notes about things, I have mentioned using a bucket, and I just want to be clear that that is a metal bucket and not a plastic bucket. If you don't have access to a metal bucket, you can just kind of dig a pit into the earth and lay your coals into there and your smoke, to which you can drape your skirt on top of. So as a skirt goes, I've mentioned sort of a jean canvas material. And what I just find the easiest is that I find the largest jean skirt, a literal skirt, and I'm often attaching hides to the waist and letting the bottom hem hit the ground, right? I want it to be closed off at the top and closed off on the bottom. I have large skirts, but this does not require a full skirt. So I will take my old and deeply loved favorite pair of jeans, and I will attach a pant leg to it. And the idea is just that we're using fabric to create a chimney effect, and that we're using a fabric that's of natural material, so we're not dealing with any sort of like elasticity or thin material that's the smoke is just going to push through. So something heavy and sturdy. If it has any buttons on it or metal bits, know that those are going to get really hot. Be careful about touching them. But that you can easily find like a jean skirt at like a thrift store for a couple of bucks. And it's just kind of already comes in an ideal shape and size. So that is my tip right there. The one rule in smoking your hide is that you never leave it unattended. So sit back, enjoy yourself, enjoy the fact that you've just made this huge accomplishment in this process that might be new to you, and stay there. Stay there because you just want to be able to manage the small issues that might come up. Maybe you did a poor job of not suspending the hide, or maybe there's a flare-up, and you want to be quick to react and move that hide out of the way. So the rule is, don't leave your hide unattended.